Daniel Harper's eyes opened slowly. Everything hurt. His chest felt heavy, like someone had placed rocks on it. His fingers tingled with pain as blood started moving through them again. The air tasted stale and metallic. "Where am I?" he thought. Red lights blinked on the ceiling above him. A loud beeping sound filled his ears. Daniel tried to sit up, but his muscles wouldn't listen. He had been lying down for too long. His body felt like it belonged to someone else. The memories came back in pieces. The solar flare, the scientists gathering in the secret bunker, the cryogenic pods, Project Sentinel. They were supposed to sleep for 100 years, maybe 200 at most. Then they would wake up and help rebuild the world. Daniel forced himself to turn his head. The movement sent sharp pains down his neck. Next to his pod were 6 other pods. Through the frosted glass, he could see shapes inside them, people, his team members. But something was wrong. The lights on their pods were dark, not blinking red like his, just dark, dead. They were all dead. The reality hit him like cold water. Daniel was alone. He pressed the release button on his pod. The glass cover hissed and slid open. Cold air rushed in. Daniel tried to stand, but his legs gave out immediately. He crashed to the floor, gasping. The floor was covered in dust, thick dust, decades worth of dust, maybe more. Daniel crawled to the nearest computer terminal. His hands shook as he pulled himself up to the screen. The display flickered to life, showing lines of data. Most of it was corrupted. The facility's power systems were failing. Only emergency backup systems kept working. But one number made Daniel's heart stop. Time elapsed. 15,347 years. No, that was impossible. The pods were designed for a few hundred years, maybe 1,000 at most, not 15,000. This had to be an error, a glitch in the system. Daniel pulled up the facility logs. The computer struggled to load the old files. Many were damaged or missing, but what remained told a terrible story. Year 127, solar flare event larger than predicted. Surface communications lost. Electromagnetic pulse destroyed most technology worldwide. Year 483, automated systems detected no signals from other bunker facilities. Project Sentinel Alpha unresponsive. Year 1205, life support systems reduced to minimum power. 6 cryopods failed. Critical errors. Year 2847, emergency protocols engaged. 1 pod maintained. All others terminated to preserve power. Year 15 to 347, final pod system failure imminent. Revival sequence activated. Daniel sat back, his mind unable to process it all. 15,000 years, everyone he knew was dead. His family, his friends. The entire world he remembered was gone. Dust. Nothing but dust. He looked around the bunker. The white walls were covered in rust and decay. Water had leaked through cracks in the ceiling, creating dark stains. Equipment that had once been new and pristine now looked ancient. The bunker had kept him alive, but it was dying too. Daniel forced himself to stand. His legs wobbled but held. He needed to check the supplies, food, water, weapons, anything that might still work after all this time. The storage room was a disaster. Most of the containers had failed. The food inside had turned to powder or rotted away completely, but Daniel found a few sealed emergency packs that looked intact. He tore one open. The protein bar inside was hard as a rock, but it was something. He ate it slowly, forcing his stomach to accept food after 15,000 years. Water was easier. The bunker's filtration system still worked, barely. Daniel drank until his stomach hurt. Next came the equipment locker. Most of the weapons were rusted and useless, but the survival suits hung in a sealed container, protected from time. Daniel pulled one on. It fit perfectly, designed to adjust to the wearer. The suit's computer came online, running diagnostics. The battery showed 60% charge. The environmental sensors worked. The communication system was dead. No one to communicate with anyway. Daniel gathered what supplies he could carry. 3 more protein bars, water purification tablets, a small knife, a flashlight. The suit had basic tools built into it. Then came the hard part. He had to go outside. The bunker's exit tunnel was long and dark. Daniel's footsteps echoed as he walked. The tunnel sloped upward, leading to the surface. The exit door was massive, designed to withstand bombs and radiation. Daniel entered the override code. Motors groaned as they tried to move the heavy door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, inch by inch, the door opened. Light poured in, real sunlight. Daniel squinted against it. He stepped outside. The world was gone. Where buildings should have stood, there were only trees. Massive trees, larger than any Daniel had seen before. Their trunks were as wide as houses. Their branches reached into the sky like giant arms. Thick vines hung between them. Strange flowers bloomed in colors that seemed too bright to be real. The ground was covered in plants, ferns, moss, things Daniel couldn't identify. The air smelled different, cleaner, wilder. There were no roads, no cars, no power lines, no buildings, nothing human at all, just forest, endless forest. Daniel walked forward in a daze. His suit's sensors showed the air was safe to breathe. The temperature was warm, no radiation detected. The world had healed itself while he slept. But where were the people? Surely someone had survived. Humans were tough. They adapted. There had to be survivors somewhere. Daniel climbed a small hill to get a better view. At the top, he turned in a slow circle. Forest stretched in every direction as far as he could see. But wait. There, in the distance, something that didn't look natural. Smoke. A thin column of smoke rising into the sky. Where there was smoke, there was fire. Where there was fire, there might be people. Hope sparked in Daniel's chest. He wasn't alone after all. He started walking toward the smoke. The journey would take hours, maybe days. But he had nowhere else to go. The bunker was dying. He needed to find other people. He needed to know what had happened to humanity. As he walked through the strange new forest, Daniel's suit recorded everything. The plants, the insects, the birds singing in the trees, species he didn't recognize. Evolution had continued while he slept. The sun moved across the sky. Daniel kept walking. His body was weak from the long sleep, but determination kept him moving, step after step, toward the smoke, toward answers. As darkness fell, Daniel climbed a tree and tied himself to a branch with his suit's safety line. Sleep came quickly despite the strange sounds of the night forest around him. He woke before dawn. The sky was getting light. Daniel climbed down and continued walking. The smoke was closer now. He could smell it. Wood burning. A campfire. Then he saw the lights. Daniel watched the lights for 3 days before making contact. He stayed hidden, observing from the trees and bushes. His protein bars ran out on the 2nd day, forcing him to eat strange berries and roots. His suit's scanner said they were safe, but they tasted awful. The lights belonged to a small settlement of people, real humans. They lived in simple huts made from wood and dried mud. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children ran between the buildings, laughing and playing. Adults worked in gardens, tending to crops Daniel didn't recognize. But what caught his attention most was how primitive everything was. No metal tools, no electricity, no machines. These people lived like humans had lived thousands of years ago, before civilization. They spoke to each other in a language Daniel barely understood. It sounded like English, but twisted, changed, words mixed with sounds from other languages. He could pick out maybe one word in 10. On the 4th day, Daniel decided to approach them. He couldn't hide forever. He needed food, water, information. He was careful. He left his suit's weapon systems disabled. He walked slowly out of the forest with his hands raised high. Two young men spotted him immediately. They shouted something Daniel couldn't understand and raised their spears. Spears, made from sharpened wood and stone points. These people had regressed completely. The two men, both in their 20s, approached carefully. One had dark hair and suspicious eyes. The other was younger, maybe 18, with brown hair and a nervous expression. "Peace," Daniel said clearly. "I mean peace." The older one, who Daniel later learned was named Jake, tilted his head. He repeated the word slowly. "Peace." Then he spoke rapidly in the strange dialect to his companion, a young man named Brandon. More people came from the settlement. Old people, young people, children hiding behind their parents. They all stared at Daniel like he was a ghost. His survival suit must have looked strange to them. Technology they had never seen. An old woman pushed through the crowd. Her hair was gray and pulled back in a long braid. Her face was wrinkled, but her eyes were sharp. She looked at Daniel for a long moment, then spoke. Daniel caught a few words. "Skywalker." "Old one." "Before time." She gestured for him to follow. Jake and Brandon kept their spears pointed at him, but they didn't attack. Daniel walked into the settlement, surrounded by curious and frightened people. The old woman, whose name was Lisa, led him to the largest hut. Inside, she offered him water in a clay cup. Daniel drank gratefully. She offered him food, some kind of cooked grain and vegetables. It tasted plain but good. Lisa spoke slowly, watching Daniel's face. Over the next few hours, they worked to understand each other. Daniel's suit had a recording system. It began analyzing their language, finding patterns. Slowly, communication became easier. What Daniel learned horrified him. These people had no written language. Everything they knew came from stories passed down by the elders, stories that changed with each telling. Their history was fragmented and confused. They knew there had been old ones who lived before them, people who had built great things. But then came the sky fire, when the sun had burned the world. Most people died. The cities fell. The machines stopped working. The survivors scattered into the wilderness. That was 15,000 years ago. Since then, humanity had clawed its way back from nothing. Small tribes formed. They learned to farm again, to make fire, to build shelters. But they never reached the heights of the old world. They stayed simple, primitive. Lisa told Daniel about the collectors. Her voice dropped to a whisper when she said the name. The other villagers looked nervous. The collectors came from the sky in metal birds. They wore strange clothes that protected them from weapons. They took people, young people, strong people. No one knew where they took them or why. Some said the collectors ate them. Others said they made them into slaves. The raids happened every few seasons, always without warning. The collectors would sweep through a settlement, take whoever they wanted, and leave. Fighting back was useless. The collectors had weapons that shot fire and thunder. Daniel's mind raced. The collectors had technology, real technology. That meant someone had preserved knowledge from the old world. But who? And why were they raiding primitive settlements? Lisa showed Daniel something else. In a cave at the edge of the settlement, ancient paintings covered the walls. The villagers considered it a sacred place. The paintings showed the history of their people. Daniel studied them carefully. Early paintings showed buildings and machines, then fire and chaos, then people living in caves. Then slowly, the paintings showed progress. Small villages, farms. But always in the later paintings there were figures in the sky, tall, thin, wearing what looked like armor, taking people away. The collectors. They had been raiding these people for thousands of years. One painting caught Daniel's attention. It showed a building, a large building built into a mountain. The painting style was crude, but Daniel recognized what it depicted. A bunker, a facility like the one he had come from. "Where is this?" Daniel asked Lisa, pointing to the painting. Lisa's expression turned grim. She spoke slowly. using hand gestures to help communicate. The place was forbidden. Evil lived there. The collectors came from that place. No one who went there ever returned. Daniel felt cold understanding settle over him. There had been other bunkers in Project Sentinel, multiple facilities designed to preserve humanity's best and brightest. He had woken in Facility 7, but there had been an Alpha facility, the main bunker, where the leaders and richest people had gone. What if they had survived? What if they had woken up to find the world destroyed and decided not to help rebuild it? What if they had decided to keep the technology for themselves? The collectors weren't aliens. They were human, descendants of the people who had been supposed to save humanity. Instead, they had become its oppressors. Daniel spent a week with Lisa's tribe. He learned their language better. He helped them with small things. His suit had tools that could cut wood cleanly. He fixed broken items. The villagers slowly accepted him. Jake and Brandon became friendly. Jake was the tribe's best hunter. Brandon was learning to be a craftsman, making tools and weapons. They taught Daniel how to track animals and which plants were safe to eat. Katie, a young woman of 23, brought Daniel food each evening. She was quiet but kind. Her sister had been taken by the collectors 2 years ago. Katie still hoped she might return someday, though the elders said no one ever came back. Daniel told them about the old world, about cars and planes, about cities with millions of people, about computers and the internet. Most of it meant nothing to them. They had no context for such things. But they listened politely to the strange old one who had come from before time. At night, Daniel lay awake planning. He couldn't stay here. These people were kind, but they were helpless against the collectors. Someone had to stop the raids. Someone had to find out what happened to the Alpha facility. He needed to go back to Bunker 7. There might be more equipment there. Weapons, supplies, maybe information about where the Alpha facility was located. On the 8th day, disaster struck. Daniel woke to the sound of horns blowing, the warning signal. He rushed outside to see people running in panic. Children crying, elders shouting orders. Jake grabbed his arm. "Collectors," he said in their broken shared language. "They come! Skybirds come!" Daniel looked up. In the distance, he saw them. 3 aircraft moving through the sky. They didn't look like any modern craft Daniel knew. They were old designs. Helicopters from the late 21st century, still functional after 15,000 years. That was impossible unless someone had been maintaining them. The helicopters descended toward the settlement. People scattered into the forest carrying children and supplies. But some were too slow, too old, too young. The helicopters landed in the settlement's central clearing. Doors opened and figures jumped out. They wore armor, old military armor, patched and repaired countless times. They carried rifles, ancient weapons, but still deadly. Daniel's suit registered them as human, definitely human. But they moved with cruel efficiency. They grabbed people who couldn't escape. An elderly man, 2 teenagers, Katie. Katie screamed and fought, but one of the collectors hit her with the butt of his rifle. She fell, dazed. They dragged her toward the helicopter. Daniel's hand went to his suit's weapon system. He had disabled it. Stupid. He activated it now, but it would take 30 seconds to power up. The energy pulse from Daniel's suit hit the collector square in the chest. The man flew backward and crashed into the helicopter. His armor sparked and smoked. He didn't get up. The other collectors spun around, searching for the threat. Daniel was already moving. His suit had basic combat programming. It helped him dodge behind a hut as rifle fire tore through the air where he had been standing. "Get Katie and run!" Daniel shouted to Brandon. Brandon hesitated for only a second, then ran to his sister. He grabbed Katie and dragged her toward the forest. Jake lay on the ground, clutching his chest. Blood poured between his fingers, but he was still breathing, still alive. Daniel fired again. Another collector went down. But now they had found him. 3 of them focused their fire on his position. The hut exploded in splinters. Daniel rolled away, came up running. His suit's shields could take a few hits, but not many. The power cell was old, damaged. He had maybe 2 more shots before the weapon system drained completely. One of the collectors threw something, a grenade, an actual grenade from the old world, preserved for 15,000 years. Daniel's suit screamed a warning. He dove behind a stone well as the grenade exploded. Rocks and dirt rained down on him. His ears rang, his vision blurred, but he was alive. Through the smoke, Daniel saw the collectors falling back to their helicopters. They had Katie secured inside one of them. They were leaving, taking their prize and abandoning the raid. No, Daniel couldn't let that happen. He sprinted toward the nearest helicopter. His suit's speed boosters kicked in, pushing him faster than any human could run naturally. One collector tried to block him. Daniel slammed into the man with his armored shoulder. Bones crunched. The collector fell. Daniel reached the helicopter just as it started to lift off. He grabbed onto the landing skid and held on. The helicopter rose into the air, Daniel hanging from it. Inside the helicopter, a collector looked down through the open door and saw him. The man raised his rifle. Daniel swung his body and kicked hard. His armored boot connected with the rifle, sending it flying. Then he pulled himself up and through the door in one smooth motion. 3 collectors inside. Katie unconscious in the corner. The pilot focused on flying. Daniel moved fast. His suit augmented his strength. He punched the first collector, sending the man crashing into the helicopter wall. The second collector drew a knife. Daniel caught the blade with his armored hand and twisted. The knife snapped. He threw the collector out the open door. The man's scream faded as he fell. The third collector was smarter. He grabbed Katie and held a knife to her throat. "Stop!" the collector yelled. His voice was strange. The same twisted English the villagers spoke, but with different words mixed in. "Stop, or girl dies." Daniel froze. The collector smiled. He thought he had won. But Daniel's suit had been recording everything, analyzing the collector's language, finding patterns, learning. "You speak the old tongue," Daniel said clearly in the collector's dialect. The collector's eyes widened in shock. "What are you? How do you know the proper speech?" "I am Old One," Daniel said. "From before the sky fire. I sleep long time. Now I wake." The collector's knife hand trembled. "Impossible. The Old Ones are all dead, gone to dust." "Not all," Daniel said. "I come from the sleeping place, the place you know, the place you come from." The pilot turned his head slightly, listening. "You lie," the collector said, but his voice shook with doubt. "Alpha facility," Daniel said, guessing. "That is your home, yes?" Both the pilot and the collector stared at Daniel now. They knew that name. The helicopter wobbled in the air as the pilot's attention split. "How do you know of Alpha?" the pilot demanded. "I was there," Daniel lied smoothly. "Long ago, before the Great Sleep. Tell me, who leads you now? Who commands the raids?" The collector's grip on Katie loosened slightly. "The Directorate commands all. Director Kyle leads the council. They say the surface people are animals, not truly human. We take the strong ones to work, to serve." Daniel's stomach turned. Everything he had feared was true. The Alpha facility survivors had created a society built on enslaving other humans. "The surface people are human," Daniel said firmly. "As human as you. They are your brothers, your family." "No," the collector said, but he sounded uncertain. "The Directorate teaches us. The surface people are lesser, weak. They need our guidance. By stealing their children? By shooting them when they resist? That is guidance?" The collector had no answer to that. Daniel pressed forward. "I go to Alpha facility now. Take me there." The pilot laughed. "We take you nowhere, Old One. We kill you and take the girl." "Then you die too," Daniel said calmly. He raised his hand and showed them his suit's weapon system, now aimed at the helicopter's control panel. "I shoot. Helicopter crashes. We all die. Or you take me to Alpha. You live. Girl lives. You choose." The two collectors looked at each other. The pilot spoke rapidly, in a code Daniel's suit couldn't translate yet. But the meaning was clear. They were deciding whether to call his bluff. Daniel wasn't bluffing. He would crash the helicopter if he had to. These men were complicit in thousands of years of slavery and murder. But he would rather save Katie first. Finally, the pilot nodded. "We take you, but Directorate will kill you when we arrive." "Maybe," Daniel said. "Maybe they try." The collector released Katie. She slumped to the floor, still unconscious. Daniel moved quickly to her side and checked her pulse. Strong. She would be okay. The helicopter changed direction. They flew for an hour over endless forest. Daniel watched the landscape below. So much green. So much life. Earth had healed itself completely while humanity slept. Then mountains appeared ahead. Large mountains, their peaks covered in snow. The Rockies, Daniel realized. The Alpha facility was built into the Rockies. As they flew closer, Daniel saw it. A massive wall surrounding a valley. Guard towers at regular intervals. Inside the wall, buildings. Real buildings with lights and power. Vehicles moving on roads. This was civilization. Or at least a twisted version of it. The helicopter descended toward a landing pad. Other helicopters sat parked nearby. People in armor walked the grounds. This was a military base, a fortress. The moment they landed, armed guards surrounded the helicopter. The pilot and collector jumped out and started talking rapidly, pointing at Daniel. Daniel stepped out slowly, his hands visible. He had powered down his weapon. No need to start a fight yet. An officer approached, a woman in her 40s with gray hair and cold eyes. She looked at Daniel's survival suit with recognition. "Project Sentinel equipment," she said in clear English. Not the twisted dialect, but real English, the language of the old world. "Where did you get this?" "I was Project Sentinel," Daniel said. "Facility 7, cryogenic suspension specialist. I woke up 2 weeks ago." The woman's expression didn't change. "Impossible. Project Sentinel personnel would have woken 15,000 years ago. You would be dust." "My facility's power systems lasted longer than expected. I am last survivor." The woman studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke into a radio on her wrist. "Director Kyle, we have a situation. You need to see this." Within minutes, Daniel was escorted into the facility. Katie was taken away to the medical center. Daniel tried to protest, but the guards made it clear he had no choice. They led him deep underground, through corridors that looked like they had been built yesterday. Clean. Well lit. The technology was old by the standards Daniel remembered, but it still worked. Someone had been maintaining it for thousands of years. Finally, they reached a large room, a council chamber. 5 people sat at a curved desk, 3 men, 2 women, all middle-aged or older, all wearing expensive clothes that looked out of place in the post-apocalyptic world. The man in the center stood. He was tall with silver hair and a face that showed no warmth. "I am Director Kyle Preston," he said, "leader of the Directorate and protector of the Alpha facility. Who are you?" Daniel stood straight and met his eyes. "Dr. Daniel Harper, aerospace engineer, Project Sentinel Facility 7. I went into cryogenic suspension in the year 2089. I woke up 15 days ago to find the world destroyed and my team dead." Kyle's eyebrows rose slightly. "Facility 7. We lost contact with that site 12,000 years ago. We assumed everyone there had perished." "They did," Daniel said bitterly. "Everyone but me." One of the women on the council leaned forward. She had kind eyes, less cold than Kyle. "I am Director Megan Collins. If what you say is true, you have been through a terrible ordeal. We can offer you sanctuary here. Safety. You have seen the surface world. It is primitive and dangerous." "The surface world is dangerous because of you." Daniel said flatly. The council chamber went silent. Kyle's expression hardened. "Explain," he said. Daniel gestured to the walls around them. "You have technology, power, medicine, education. You could have shared these things with the surface survivors. Help them rebuild. Instead, you raid their villages and steal their people. You keep them ignorant and weak. Labor," Daniel said simply. "You take their strongest people, their youngest. You use them as workers, as slaves." Kyle didn't deny it. "We prefer the term servants. And yes, we recruit from the surface population. They receive food, shelter, medical care, far better than their primitive villages offer. Many are grateful for the opportunity." "Grateful?" Daniel's voice rose. "I watched one of your collectors shoot an unarmed man. I saw you drag away a woman who was screaming. That doesn't look like gratitude." Director Megan spoke softly. "Dr. Harper, the world you remember is gone, dead. We are all that remains of true civilization. Without us, humanity would never rise again. Sometimes difficult choices must be made for the greater good." "There is nothing good about this," Daniel said. He looked at each council member in turn. "You were supposed to save humanity. Instead, you enslaved it. You have had 15,000 years and accomplished nothing. Where are your universities, your space programs, your new technologies? You just sit here hoarding what the old world left behind." That struck a nerve. Kyle's face reddened. "We maintain the old knowledge, preserve it. That is our sacred duty." "No," Daniel said. "Your duty was to share it, to lift humanity back up, not push it down to make yourselves feel superior." Kyle slammed his hand on the desk. "You know nothing of what we have endured, the sacrifices we have made, guarding this facility, keeping the technology safe. The surface people would destroy it all if given the chance." "You never gave them a chance," Daniel shot back. "You decided they were beneath you, and that made it easy. Easy to take their children, easy to shoot them when they fought back. Easy to sleep at night telling yourselves it was necessary." The council members looked uncomfortable now, all except Kyle, whose expression had turned to ice. "You will not speak to this council in such a manner," Kyle said quietly. "Guards." 4 armed soldiers entered the room. They grabbed Daniel's arms. Daniel didn't resist. Not yet. "Take him to detention," Kyle ordered. "We will decide what to do with him later." As the guards dragged Daniel away, he locked eyes with Megan. She looked troubled, uncertain. Good. Maybe not all the council members were completely lost. The guards threw Daniel into a cell. It was clean and modern, with a bed and a small bathroom. Better than the cells from the old world, but still a cage. They took his survival suit, leaving him in the basic clothes underneath. Without the suit, Daniel felt vulnerable, weak. He sat on the bed and tried to think. He was trapped in the Alpha facility. Katie was somewhere in this complex, probably scared and confused. Jake might be dead from the gunshot wound. Brandon and Lisa's tribe would be terrified. Daniel had to do something. But what? He was one man against an entire facility of armed guards. Hours passed. Then the cell door opened. Daniel stood quickly, expecting guards. Instead, Megan entered alone. She looked at him for a long moment. "You reminded the council of things we try to forget," she said quietly. "Good," Daniel replied. Megan sat down on the edge of the bed. She looked tired, old. "When I was a child, my grandmother told me stories. She was one of the original Alpha facility survivors. She remembered the world before the Sky Fire. She told me about cities full of people working together, about humans going to space, about hope for the future." Daniel listened. "She also told me about the dark days, when we first emerged from the facility and found the world destroyed. The violence, the chaos, the decision to retreat back underground and let the surface people fight among themselves." Megan's voice cracked. She said it was necessary, that there was no other choice. There is always another choice, Daniel said. Is there? Megan looked at him. We have tried. 70 years ago, Director Patterson proposed opening trade with surface settlements, sharing basic medicine and tools. Do you know what happened? Daniel shook his head. One settlement took our gifts and attacked the next settlement with them, started a war that killed thousands, used our medicine to keep their warriors alive longer so they could kill more people. Megan's eyes were wet. After that, the council voted to end all direct aid, to maintain control through selective recruitment instead. So you gave up? Daniel said. One failure, and you abandoned humanity. We saved what we could, Megan said defensively. You saved yourselves. Daniel moved closer. Director Collins, I have been asleep for 15,000 years. I woke up to a world I don't recognize. Everyone I loved is dead. Everything I built is dust. I should give up, lie down and die. But I won't, because that is not what humans do. We don't give up. We adapt. We try again. We fail, and we learn, and we try something different. Megan was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. What would you have us do? Open the facility, Daniel said immediately. Share the knowledge. Send teachers to surface settlements. Give them tools, books, medicine. Help them rebuild. Kyle will never agree to that. Then remove Kyle. Megan's eyes widened. You are talking about a coup, about overthrowing the directorate. I am talking about doing the right thing, Daniel said. Even if it is hard, even if it is scary. That is what humans do. Megan stood and paced the small cell. Even if I wanted to help you, which I am not saying I do, the council is split. Kyle has 3 votes, including his own. I have 2. Any major decision requires 4 votes. So we need to convince one more council member, Daniel said. Impossible. Alan Carter is Kyle's closest ally. They have worked together for 30 years. Director Lisa Monroe fears change above all else, and Director Paul Richards just votes with whoever seems strongest. Daniel smiled slightly. So, we make you seem stronger than Kyle. How? Take me to the surface workers, the ones you brought here from the villages. Let me talk to them. Megan frowned. Why? Because I want to show you something, Daniel said. Trust me. Megan considered for a long moment. Then she nodded. I must be insane. Come on. She led Daniel through the facility. Guards looked at them strangely but didn't interfere. Megan had authority here. They took an elevator down several levels. The doors opened to reveal a large work area. Hundreds of people labored at various tasks. Some cleaned, some repaired equipment, some worked in kitchens. All wore simple gray uniforms. Daniel walked among them. He saw their faces, young people, most of them, taken from their families, forced to work in this underground prison. He spotted Katie in the corner, sorting supplies with other workers. She looked up and saw him. Her eyes widened in recognition. Daniel walked over to her. Are you okay? Katie nodded slowly. She looked at Megan nervously. It is all right, Megan said. Speak freely. Katie swallowed. They say I work here now. They say I have new life, better life, but I want to go home. I want to see Jake and Brandon. Jake is hurt, Daniel said gently. But he is strong. He will survive. Tears ran down Katie's face. I did not choose this. They took me from my family. Daniel turned to Megan. You see? She does not want to be here. None of them do. Megan looked around at the workers. For the first time, she really looked at their faces, saw their expressions, the sadness, the fear, the resignation. We feed them, she said weakly. Give them medicine, safety. A comfortable prison is still a prison, Daniel said. One of the older workers, a man of about 40, stepped forward. Director Collins, I worked here 20 years. 20 years since collectors took me from my village. I have son there. Daughter, I never see them again. I want to go home, please. More workers gathered around, all telling similar stories. Families torn apart, lives stolen, years of service with no choice, no freedom. Megan's face went pale. I did not know. The report said you were volunteers, that you wanted to be here. The older worker laughed bitterly. Reports lie. We told to say we happy, or we punished. Less food, harder work. Some who complain too much disappear. This is wrong, Megan whispered. She looked at Daniel. This is very wrong. Yes, Daniel agreed. Now help me fix it. Megan straightened her shoulders. Something changed in her expression. A decision made. What do you need? Access to the facility's communication system. I want to speak to everyone here. Every citizen, every worker, every guard. Let them all hear the truth. Kyle will stop you the moment you start talking. Then we move fast, Daniel said, and we pray we convince enough people before he can silence us. Megan nodded. The main communication center is on level the Daniel picked up the microphone. His voice would now reach every speaker in the facility, every room, every hallway. Thousands of people would hear him. He took a breath and began. My name is Dr. Daniel Harper. I was an aerospace engineer in the year 2089. I went into cryogenic sleep as part of Project Sentinel, a program designed to preserve humanity through the coming solar flare. I slept for 15,000 years. I woke up 2 weeks ago. Throughout the facility, people stopped what they were doing. Workers paused. Guards looked at speakers in confusion. In the council chamber, Kyle Preston's head snapped up. Daniel continued. When I woke, I found a world transformed. The cities were gone. Civilization had collapsed, but humanity survived. I found people living in small villages, working together, raising families. They had nothing, no technology, no written language, but they had not given up. They adapted. They endured. Kyle was already moving. He grabbed his radio. Security! Shut down the communication system immediately. I found something else, too, Daniel said, speaking faster now. I found that some humans had preserved technology. The Alpha facility, the people who were supposed to help rebuild the world, but you did not rebuild. You hid, you hoarded, and worst of all, you enslaved your fellow humans. The technician received the shutdown order. His hands moved to comply, but Megan stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. Let him finish. The technician looked between them, uncertain. That is an order, Megan said quietly. Daniel pressed on. I have walked among you. I have seen how you live. Comfortable, safe, clean water, good food, medicine, all the benefits of civilization. And I have seen the surface people, living in dirt, dying of diseases you could cure. Watching their children stolen by your collectors. Guards burst into the communication center, but Megan stood in front of Daniel, blocking them. Stand down, she commanded. The guards hesitated. Megan was a director. They had to obey her, but Kyle was screaming orders through their radios. You tell yourselves it is necessary, Daniel said, that the surface people are lesser, that they cannot handle knowledge. But that is a lie. A lie you tell yourselves to justify 15,000 years of cruelty. The truth is simpler and uglier. You keep them down because it is easier. Because it makes you feel special, superior. Because if they had what you have, you would just be humans again. Equal. And that terrifies you. Throughout the facility, people listened. Workers nodded. Some citizens looked uncomfortable. Guards shifted uneasily. Kyle ran into the communication center with a dozen armed soldiers. Arrest them both! Now! The guards moved forward, but several hesitated, looking at each other, at Megan, at Daniel. I spent my whole life building things, Daniel said, his voice strong. Machines, systems, solutions to problems. And I learned something important. The best solutions are not the easiest ones. They are the right ones, the hard ones, the ones that require courage. Shut him up, Kyle screamed. A guard reached for the microphone. Daniel pulled it away and kept talking. Humanity did not climb out of caves by taking the easy path. We did not reach the stars by choosing comfort over challenge. We did it by working together, by sharing knowledge, by believing that everyone deserves a chance to rise as high as their abilities will take them. More people gathered outside the communication center. Citizens, workers, guards, all listening. The Alpha facility has a choice to make today, Daniel said. Continue as you have been. Maintain control through force and fear. Keep the surface people ignorant and dependent. Live comfortable lives built on their suffering. That is the easy choice. Kyle grabbed a rifle from one of his guards. He aimed it at Daniel. Or you can choose the harder path, Daniel said, looking directly at Kyle. Open your doors. Share your knowledge. Send teachers to the surface settlements. Give them books, tools, medicine. Help them rebuild. Not as servants, as equals, as family. It will be difficult, messy. There will be failures, but it will be right. And in the long term, it will make us all stronger. Kyle's finger tightened on the trigger. Megan stepped between them. If you shoot him, you shoot me too. The crowd outside the center had grown. Hundreds of people now, and Daniel could see the division among them. Some faces showed anger at his words, but others showed something different. Hope, agreement, shame. Director Paul Richards pushed through the crowd. He looked at Kyle, then at Daniel, then at the watching masses. I vote with Director Collins, Paul said loudly. It is time for change. Kyle's face went purple with rage. You are all fools, traitors. We are human, Megan said quietly. Maybe it is time we started acting like it. Kyle swung the rifle toward Megan. I will not let you destroy everything we built. You built nothing, Daniel said. You inherited technology and wasted it. 15,000 years, and what do you have to show for it? The same old machines, the same old knowledge. No progress, no growth, just stagnation and cruelty. A young guard stepped forward. Daniel recognized him. It was one of the collectors from the helicopter, the one who had held a knife to Katie's throat. Director Preston, the young guard said. I was raised to believe the surface people were animals, less than human. But I spoke with the old one. He showed me they are like us. They love their families, feel pain, want better lives for their children. I do not want to hurt them anymore. Other guards nodded. The tide was turning. Kyle saw it too. His hand shook on the rifle. For a moment, Daniel thought he would shoot anyway. Go down fighting rather than accept change. But then Director Alan Carter stepped forward. Kyle's closest ally, the man who had supported him for 30 years. Kyle, Alan said softly, it is over. We lost our way. Maybe a long time ago, maybe from the beginning. But this young man is right. We cannot continue like this. Kyle lowered the rifle. His shoulders slumped. He looked suddenly old, tired. I was trying to save humanity, he whispered. I know, Megan said gently. But you cannot save people by chaining them. You can only save them by setting them free. Kyle looked at Daniel with haunted eyes. What if you are wrong? What if the surface people take our knowledge and destroy themselves? Then they destroy themselves as free people, Daniel said, making their own choices, their own mistakes. That is better than living as your slaves. Security forces led Kyle away. He did not resist. The fight had gone out of him. Daniel set down the microphone. His hands were shaking. He had done it. Changed the course of history with just words and truth. Megan put a hand on his shoulder. Now comes the hard part. Actually doing what you promised. The next 3 months were chaos. Good chaos, but chaos nonetheless. The directorate restructured. Kyle stepped down. Megan became the new lead director. Paul and Alan supported her. They brought in 2 new council members, people who believed in change. The first order was to free the workers. Every person taken from the surface was given a choice. Stay at the Alpha facility as a paid employee, or return home with supplies and gifts for their villages. Katie chose to return, but not immediately. She asked to stay for a few weeks and learn. Learn to read, learn about medicine, learn everything she could to take back to her people. Daniel himself went back to Lisa's village with a medical team. They found Jake alive, barely. The bullet had punctured his lung, but he had survived through sheer stubbornness and his sister Brandon's care. The Alpha doctors saved his life. When Jake was strong enough, he and Daniel sat by the fire and talked. "You saved my sister," Jake said. "You saved her first," Daniel replied. "You took that bullet for her." Jake smiled. "She is my sister. That is what family does." Daniel thought about that. Family. These surface people understood something the Alpha facility had forgotten. That humanity was one family, all connected, all responsible for each other. The Alpha facility began sending out teaching teams, small groups of educators who would live in surface settlements for months at a time, teaching reading, writing, basic science, mathematics. They brought medical supplies, water purification systems, seeds for better crops, simple tools that could be made and repaired locally. It was not perfect. Some surface tribes rejected the teachers, fearing a trap. Some Alpha citizens resisted the changes, wanting to return to the old ways. There were arguments, conflicts, growing pains. But slowly, gradually, progress happened. Daniel established the first Restoration Center, a school where surface people and Alpha citizens could learn together. Katie was in the first class. So was the young guard from the helicopter, whose name was Gary. Daniel taught engineering classes. How to build simple machines, how to maintain equipment, how to solve problems through science and logic. But he also learned. The surface people taught him about the new world, about the plants and animals that had evolved, about survival skills he had never needed in the old world, about community and cooperation. Lisa visited the Restoration Center 6 months after it opened. She was 70 years old and had never learned to read. But she sat in a classroom with teenagers and young adults and learned her letters. Daniel watched her read her first complete sentence aloud. Her hands shook. Tears ran down her weathered face, but her voice was strong and proud. "I can read," she said in wonder. "After 70 years, I can read." The class applauded. Surface people and Alpha citizens together, celebrating. That night, Daniel made his final log entry. He had been recording everything since he woke up. A complete history of these months. Future generations would know what happened, would learn from both the mistakes and the triumphs. He sat in his small room at the Restoration Center and spoke into his recorder. Day 157 since awakening. The old world is gone. I have finally accepted that. Everything I knew, everyone I loved, all dust. For a long time, I thought that meant everything was lost. But I was wrong. Humanity survived, changed, adapted. We fell so far, lost so much, and yet we did not die. We kept going. That is what we do. That is what makes us human. The surface people could have given up, lived like animals, but they built communities, families, passed down stories to their children, held on to hope even when there was no reason to hope. The Alpha facility people could have shared their knowledge from the start, lifted everyone up, but they chose fear instead, chose control, chose to see themselves as superior, and in doing so, they became smaller, weaker, stagnant. Both groups taught me something important. Survival is not enough. Technology is not enough. What makes civilization is not what we build or what we know. It is how we treat each other, whether we choose to lift each other up or push each other down. The future is uncertain. Maybe the surface people will learn quickly and rise again. Maybe it will take another 1,000 years. Maybe there will be setbacks and failures. Probably there will be. But for the first time since I woke up, I have hope. Real hope. Because I have seen what humans can do when they work together, when they choose courage over comfort, when they choose unity over division. We lost 15,000 years of progress, but maybe that is okay. Maybe we needed to lose the old world to remember what really matters. Not the machines we build, not the power we hold, but each other. My name is Dr. Daniel Harper. I am the last survivor of Project Sentinel Facility 7. I slept for 15,000 years and woke to a world I did not recognize. But I am not alone. I am surrounded by humans, tough, resilient, hopeful humans, and together we will build something new, something better. The future is unwritten, and that is exactly as it should be. Daniel turned off the recorder. Through his window, he could see the Restoration Center courtyard. Students sat in small groups, studying together, surface people and alpha citizens, learning from each other, laughing together. Katie walked by with Gary, both carrying books. They waved to Daniel. He waved back. Tomorrow, they would start building the second Restoration Center, then a third, then more, spreading knowledge across the continent, slowly reconnecting humanity's scattered pieces. It would not be easy. There would be conflicts, disagreements, failures. But humans had survived 15,000 years of darkness. They had adapted, endured, held on to their humanity even when everything else was lost. If they could do that, they could do anything. Daniel smiled and headed to bed. For the first time in 15,000 years, he was looking forward to tomorrow. I can get you in. But after that, you are on your own. That is all I need. They moved quickly. Megan used her authority to access restricted areas. Within 20 minutes, Daniel stood in the communication center. A technician looked up in surprise. Director Collins? What brings you here? Emergency announcement, Megan said. Priority Alpha, open all channels. The technician hesitated. I should verify with Director Preston first. I am giving you a direct order, Megan said firmly. Open all channels now. The technician's hands moved over the controls. All channels open, Director. Megan nodded to Daniel. You have maybe 5 minutes before Kyle shuts it down. Make them count. Kyle smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. You understand nothing. When we emerged from Alpha Facility 500 years after the Sky Fire, the world was chaos. The surface people were animals, killing each other for scraps. We tried to help them at first. We shared food, medicine. Do you know what they did? They attacked us, stole from us, killed our ambassadors. So you gave up on them, Daniel said. No, another council member said, a heavy-set man named Director Alan Carter. We realized the truth. They were no longer capable of civilization. The Sky Fire had broken them, broken their minds, broken their culture. We could not save them. So we saved ourselves. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. That's a lie. I lived with them. They are intelligent, kind, capable. You keep them down because it benefits you. Benefits us how? Kyle asked softly. Jake burst from the forest with his spear. He ran at the collectors, shouting his sister's name. Katie was his sister too. One of the collectors raised his rifle and fired. The sound was deafening. Jake fell, blood spreading across his chest. Brandon screamed. The villagers screamed. The collectors laughed. Daniel's weapon system came online. A targeting reticle appeared in his helmet display. He had one shot before they noticed him. One chance. He fired. Not firelight. These lights moved. They blinked in patterns. Red, blue, green, technology. Someone had technology out here. Daniel's heart raced. He crouched behind a large tree and watched. The lights moved through the forest in a search pattern. Were they looking for something? For him? Daniel activated his suit's recording system. Whatever happened next, he wanted evidence of it. The lights came closer. Closer. Daniel held his breath and waited,